Hey everyone, this is your captain speaking, and we have moved into a new decade together. And so I want to wish all of you Happy New Year, and I hope you were able to celebrate in a way that brought you joy, that opened your heart, that brought you a hopeful vision for the coming year and for the coming decade. And so I'm here to share with you about my forecast for 2020. And the word forecast is maybe not the best word because it kind of implies predictions. And I don't have concrete predictions for you, but I do have descriptions of the energies that we'll be working with and suggestions for how to make the most out of these energies, how to align with them in a way that brings good things into your life. And I'm going to do this in 3 parts. I'm going to record 3 different videos that are all about my forecast for 2020, my vision for 2020. And the first video is going to be more on a personal scale. I'm going to give you a sense of how these powerful alignments of 2020 can be helpful for your life as an individual, how they can be instructive for your personal life, your professional life, your relationship life. Yes. The second video is going to be more on the collective scale, talking more about what we might expect in the news, what we might expect politically, internationally, on that global scale. And the third video will be a tarot spread that will be devoted to exploring 2020. And I think that last video will help kind of bring closure to these 2 pieces that I'm going to start with. And so I want to begin by just acknowledging that there's a lot going on right here at the beginning of the year as I record this on January 3rd. There's a lot going on. It's a very intense moment, and in particular, I want to acknowledge the devastating apocalyptic fires in Australia and send so many prayers to all of the beings and animals and forests of Australia, sending love and hoping for rain, praying for rain for you in Australia. And there is also an impeachment process happening in the United States. I want to acknowledge that this is a very profound moment for the United States of America, just on that level, the impeachment process that our Constitution demands in situations like we've been in. And related to that is this very serious unfolding story where our president has made a decision to assassinate a leader of Iran. General Soleimani, I believe is how it's pronounced. And yes, we've assassinated a foreign leader, and that is a very serious matter. And I will be talking about it in the second video, but I want to just acknowledge it now and send prayers and love to the entire Middle East region, for all of the peoples of the Middle East that may be feeling more fear, even terror, in this moment, and for those who've lost their lives. And then also prayers for the United States. It's been palpable the last 48 hours, the kind of gravity of the situation, the deadly seriousness of it. And so I send love and prayers to the people of the United States who are dealing with a very serious situation right now. And so all of these things will be returned to in the second video, but here in the first video, I want to talk about the alignments of 2020 as they relate more to your personal life and to what you may envision for this year. And so I want to begin by giving a couple portal names for this really dominant alignment that we're moving into here. And let me just name the alignment I'm referring to. Please check out my previous 2 videos as they start to talk about the energies that I'm going to now talk about in a bigger way, particularly the video 2 videos ago, and which it showed the astronomy for what I'm going to describe. And I really encourage you to look at that. We look at the charts and we look at the astronomy so that you can really feel into the rarity of the alignment that I'm calling the middle path portal, the middle path beyond extremes portal. I am using that portal name because this involves Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn, or I should say Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, have come into a very rare triple conjunction, something that is extremely rare, actually. I've done some research to see how rare it is to have Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in the same part of the sky in a very tight range of degrees for an extended period of time, which is what we have this year. Right now, they're within a 15-degree range. As we move into February, it'll be within a 10-degree range, and then it moves as close as 6-7 degrees, and ultimately 4-5 degrees of precision. That's very precise, and it lasts all year from this point into early 2021. We've had previous alignments where, like, the last time it happened was in 1981, the end of 1981. They were all in a triple conjunction, but they only got within 8-9 degrees of each other, and only for 1 month were they within that range. And before that, you have to go all the way back to, I think it's 1425. And again, a very brief alignment where they got within 10 degrees for about a month. But you got to go all the way back to the year 1285 to find a similar alignment. So what's that? 700 years ago? And that was a similarly long-lasting and precise alignment that was there for a whole year, basically. The next time this happens is not for over 1,000 years from now, in 3151 and 3152. So I say this just so you can get a sense of how rare this is. And in a way, it's the kind of rare energy that only happens in many lifetimes. Let's say we've all been incarnating 20, 50, 100 times over the last centuries. This is the only time it's happened in the last 700 years and for the next over 1,000 years. So yeah, tuning in to the rarity of this alignment. Rarity equals power. When you're able to tune into it, you can sense, here's a rare opportunity for me on my soul's journey of evolution and development. Here is a rare moment in this incarnation where I can really evolve into something more and manifest something really rare, build something really rare. This alignment has something to do with building a better life, excavating and then building a strong structure over a strong foundation, something better for yourself. And so it's a good time to start visioning, how has your whole life been leading up to this moment where you can build a strong foundation and then build something that's bigger and more satisfying for yourself? I think that's what we're talking about. I also have thought about the portal name, the Dragonrider portal. The Dragonrider portal, because Pluto has to do with mass scale life force energies. Well, it is the forces of nature, and you add Jupiter and it makes it bigger. And so like really big scale forces of nature, like volcanic scale mountains, and the power that's in a volcano, and also like the mass scale of any large animal, like a whale. So this could be the whale rider portal. But it's like Pluto is the dragon, it's the fire, it's the power. And Jupiter makes it grand, the grandeur of a dragon. And we're talking about, I think, a year where we're learning to master and channel massive amounts of energy, learning to own and work with the powerful forces of nature that are moving through our lives. And so, yes, it's a time to be raising your energy and working with the natural way in which energies can rise. Doing practices like yoga, pranayama, breath work, tai chi, anything that's working with forces of energy, where you're tapping into your life force energies, tantric practices of all sorts. Certainly tantric sexuality could be one of the ways in which you're working with massive energies and then channeling them successfully. Jupiter brings the potential for success. Saturn brings the potential for mastery and hard work, disciplined focus with mass scale energies. Disciplined focus with mass scale energies, the Kundalini rising energies, like learning to be grounded with those energies and at the same time working with them to channel them in a way where you can manifest great things, manifest greatness, manifest success. And so, yes, it's a Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto triple conjunction. It's already within 15 degrees, gets within 10 degrees in February, and then in March it really kicks in. And I want to use the metaphor of mountain climbing in our time here. I also want to be referring to the Lord of the Rings and the final book, The Return of the King, as a kind of metaphor, analogy for the energy that we're working with. The third book of Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, came out at the end of 1955. It was published October 1955 in the UK and January 1956 here in the United States. So that period had a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in a tight square to Saturn. So the same three planets in a very potent alignment. And I feel like The Return of the King really captures a lot of the energy that we are basically working with. If you think about the epic scale drama of that novel, and the film also came out under Saturn-Pluto opposition that had recently also involved Jupiter. And so in 2001, as that film came out, there was very much this energy in the collective. And so a kind of epic drama of good and evil, and also facing the shadow, integration of the shadow, integration of limitations, like respecting our limitations when it comes to power, especially. And so I think there's a big theme on an individual scale and on a collective scale that has to do with working with power in a way that is both humble, but also where you're able to work with power in a way that brings you success rather than defeat. We are seeing so many misuses of power in the world these days. And so I definitely feel like it's a big moment in the world for looking at our own relationship on an individual scale with power and also on a collective scale. So, the mountaineering metaphor. Yes. There's something about Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto that on the biggest scale, it could be like climbing Mount Everest. And so a question to begin with is, what's your Mount Everest this lifetime? Now, that's sort of a trick question because this is about the middle path. And I don't think actually trying to climb Mount Everest is the middle path for most people. It's a very extreme thing to try to do. Some people are able to do it, but I think for most people, it's better to aim towards a more modest mountain, maybe a local hill of some sort, but we're looking to find a mountain that we've kind of been setting our sights for this whole lifetime, even for many lifetimes. Maybe we've been setting our sights on a mountain. In some ways, it's Mount Doom. It's the mountain where we face our shadow, integrate it, and then arise triumphant. On another level, though, it's the mountain of finding balance and success and thriving in this lifetime, living with passion in a way that's balanced. And so I want you to think about what is the mountain you're aiming for. And I think aiming for something that's kind of at your growth edge, not too far beyond your growth edge. Maybe it's something you've been preparing for a long time, where maybe you've had some defeat or made some mistakes in the past, and now is the opportunity to learn from those mistakes, those defeats, and approach the mountaineering expedition of 2020 with humility, recognizing your limitations, recognizing the limitations of your resources. And that's another big theme for 2020 is resource management, sustainable investment of resources, and protection of resources. These are Saturn, Pluto themes. And so that's something to be thinking about. What is the mountain that you have the resources to aim for without going to extremes where you end up depleted of resources or burned out, exhausted? You don't want to overreach, but you don't want to underreach either, recognizing that there's a special opportunity this year to build something strong and successful. I've studied a little bit of the psychology of flow states, and flow states are the states of consciousness that are the most satisfactory. They're joy-filled, and they can be constellated in different ways. But one way is to be living at your growth edge in whatever you're skilled at. Say it's the career that you've pursued. Staying at your growth edge where you get better and better, where you try to get better at whatever it is, to develop your skill in the direction of mastery. And what they've found is there's a kind of sweet spot where the growth edge is. If you're there, it's like there's a challenge, but it's not too much of a challenge. It's the sweet spot of challenge where when you're there, it feels not effortless, but where the effort is so satisfying that there's not pain. You don't move into negative states of consciousness when you are working at your growth edge in a way that inspires flow. And so this is my way of saying, sometimes with Jupiter, Pluto, you can aim too big. Maybe that's the biggest shadow of the Jupiter, Pluto, is aiming so big and then falling so low with Saturn, where you try to do something that's beyond reason. And as a result of that, there's some kind of, really major experience of defeat. And whereas, if you aim within your limitations, there's not going to be that same extreme. You may not get exactly where you're going, but you also have been wise about it. Wise to protect your resources and not overreach. And so I want us to be thinking about the first weeks of the year as kind of preparing for the climb, gathering your resources. I want to really encourage doing an inventory of your resources, In the 12-step program, they talk about a fearless and moral inventory. And I think that's very appropriate to 2020 because of the Saturn-Pluto cycle of time being emphasized, which has so much to do with facing and integrating shadow, which is what the 12 steps are all about. The 4th step, doing a searching and fearless moral inventory of our character limitations, character flaws, and owning those. But it's also a time to be doing a more positive moral inventory where you're really looking at, wow, here are all these amazing resources that I have. The resources of time, the resources of money and possessions, the resources of your wisdom, your hard-won wisdom over the course of your life, the way you've learned stuff. That's a resource to draw upon, your experience, and the resources of different areas of mastery, especially in your career, your chosen specialty. Perhaps it's also not your career, but other areas where you have a kind of mastery. That's a potential resource. And then there's the resource of your capacity for emotional processing. Like we all have a certain amount of emotional processing we can do, some more than others. That's a kind of skillful capacity that can be seen as a resource. If you have that skill, it gives you more possibilities. And there's also the resources of intimacy, the skills that we have in intimate relationships. That's a kind of resource that can be very helpful. And there's other areas that I want to maybe explore in a separate video, just really talking about this idea of resources and resource management, resource protection. Again, big theme for 2020. So as I'm recording this, the Sun and Mercury are conjunct Saturn and Pluto in a pretty tight arrangement. Jupiter's off a bit, but coming in, Mercury and the Sun have just been on Jupiter. See my previous video where I talked about the new moon conjunct Jupiter and how rare that is. That alignment we're just coming out of. So we're just coming out of this visitation with Jupiter, where hopefully we've been developing a positive attitude and a kind of positive mindset and a hopeful orientation to the year ahead. Now, as it's more focused on Saturn and Pluto, these next couple weeks I feel are about, what did I say here? I think until around January 20th, we have the Sun-Mercury activation of the Saturn-Pluto. And yes, first of all, the Sun just brings a spotlight onto things. It brings a spotlight onto Saturn. It brings a spotlight onto Mercury in a way that you can see it in a very strong way in your individual life. And with Mercury, in a way that's really affecting the mind state, the thinking process, as well as communication. I think with Mercury, these next 2-3 weeks are about getting a really strong, focused mind state, getting a real clear, focused mental attitude where you're kind of bringing your mind into a focus on the vision for the year ahead. There's something about these 4 planets together that's about kind of finding your steely strength, and determination to set out on the journey towards that mountaintop goal. And so you're doing the inventory of your resources and you're getting focused. You're getting serious. You're gathering up your power, your will, and your mastery and your strength. And you're using your mind to focus on where you're going. And putting out of your mind anything that's not essential to the project at hand, which is preparing to go climb towards a big goal of yours. Perhaps a multi-incarnation goal that you're aiming for. And so Yeah, it's like before you climb Everest, you spend time in the city level, and is it Kathmandu that people fly into? I'm not sure, but you're hanging out there, you're making contact with your guides and your Sherpas, and you're hiring different people, and you're getting all your equipment ready, and it's a serious time where you have to be seriously focused to make sure you're prepared. And so this is I'd say a preparatory period these next few weeks, and starting to kind of build your energy, starting to work towards the goals ahead, knowing that as we head towards March, I want everybody to really mark March on your calendar, because that's a really big month where Mars comes into the quadruple conjunction with Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto by March are super tight together, and then Mars comes into a tight quadruple conjunction, and there are a couple of times where the moon's on there in a 5-planet conjunction. I want to be sure to note those while I'm thinking about it. March 17th to the 19th is the first one, where the moon will be in a tight 5-planet conjunction with Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. Wow, that's super rare. It hasn't happened at least for over 700 years. It won't happen again for at least another 1,000 years. A month of Mars, the warrior energy, and courage and confidence and athleticism and action, fire, combining with Pluto's power and passion and Saturn's focus and Jupiter's positivity and successful attitude, and it's expansive quality, it's uplifting quality. You put all those together, and I'm seeing March and April as being the push to base camp. Like, it's the first big stop. You're having to really exercise to get where you're going, really do your first big push. But then you arrive at base camp and you get settled there. You start to adjust to the altitude, and then you gather your resources again for the next push. And I see that happening. First big push in March, and then maybe a little bit of a break as you get to May and June, and then later there's another big push. It gets really strong. The energies are super potent as you get towards the later part of the year. In the next video, I'll talk about how it really lines up with the US election. Some very dramatic alignments from the election to the inauguration. Really, really epic political energies. But also in your personal life, there could be a kind of epic political nature to working with big energies and big structures in your life that, that maybe you're on a career level, where maybe you're in power dynamics with other people. Yes. And so, okay, these next few weeks are about gathering your strength, starting to focus in, and then as we get more towards March, big push to base camp. And okay, I'm going to refer to my notes here for a moment. As you get to the 20th or so is when I'm saying the Mercury Sun conjunction is passing. That's a first big wave of the year. And then there's a little bit of a respite where we get a Venus-Neptune conjunction. I'll be doing some individual videos on some of these alignments later. Definitely the Venus-Neptune conjunction, which I called this last year the heart chakra portal. And so that's kind of like when you're preparing to go climb the mountain and you do some spiritual practice and you do some, maybe do some singing and you open your heart. Venus Neptune's all about like opening your heart to divine guidance. As much as this Jupiter Saturn Pluto alignment is kind of epic and serious and global in scale, it's going to be important to balance that energy out throughout the year, where you're doing other things that are not about the epic climbing of the mountain, but coming down the mountain to just play and to be intimate with loved ones. And in the case of Venus Neptune, which let's say what are the dates of Venus, Neptune? Like till February 3rd from, or excuse me, yeah, January 25th, let's say, to February 3rd, maybe the 23rd to the 3rd of February, something like that. We get the Venus-Neptune conjunction, which is a nice couple weeks for doing heart practices, anything that helps you move into the heart chakra. And coming right out of that, starting around February 8th through the 24th, there's a Mercury-Neptune conjunction, which I'm going to call, I think, the psychic downloads portal, which is has so much to do with making contact and being in communication with the divine, with your higher self. So that's another transit where you're going to have an opportunity to get inspiration for exactly where you're headed, where you're getting more direct spiritual guidance in terms of this big mountain climb expedition of the year. That Mercury-Neptune leads right into a Sun-Neptune conjunction until March 17th. So there'll be this kind of Neptune wave that'll be coming in at the end of January into mid-March. So there's going to be a lot of support in terms of contact with your spirituality. I think it's going to be super important to be doing regular spiritual practice throughout 2020 so that you can manage these epic energies, which with Jupiter, Pluto, there can be kind of massive appetites for power, for sex, for financial reward, appetites for the pleasures of life. The Buddhist middle path beyond extremes, it's like between the extreme of austerity and denying yourself things and doing extreme spiritual practice, psycho-spiritual practice on the one hand, and extreme indulgence at the other end, the way in which we have billionaires out there that are in extreme indulgence when it comes to those appetites for life. And so I think it's really important to keep those appetites in check throughout the year and to balance the outer life with the spiritual life. To be doing psycho-spiritual growth work throughout the year, I think will really help. And anything that helps you really stay grounded as well, because these energies can be so epic and oriented towards the heights that I think Saturn helps to keep the grounding in the midst of the epic scale drama. And so, yes, the support of the spiritual contact as you move into March, when the big push is there, where you're really working with powerful activation of energies, prana, life force, kundalini. All of that could be building. I think it's wise to be prepared throughout the year for big waves of energy. What are you going to do with the big waves of energy that are coming? There's potential for working with them athletically, certainly, especially in March with Mars on there. Having intention to be more athletic this year, to develop your body and strength in a way that it can sustain big energies. And I think it's really good to be starting on that here at the beginning of the year. I think the New Year ritual is already good for that kind of intention setting, for being more healthy, being more athletic, being more disciplined. You can go to extremes there, but there's a middle path where you are getting healthier, you're getting more athletic, your capacity to channel energy is getting stronger. Okay? Let's see here. What else do I want to say? I've got a bunch of notes here, but the time is passing and I don't want to go too much longer. I think I've covered a lot of it. I wrote here that there's something about these alignments that in the tarot, the cards like the Emperor comes to mind, the King of Fire, the Queen of Fire, all the kings and queens, really, these cards that have to do with mastery but definitely royalty is Jupiter. And so like the most successful royal versions of things. And when it comes to mastering life force and passion, I think that's what we're talking about. There's something about Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto that could have like really big appetites for control, like OCD type symptomology, but definitely we all have that impulse to try to control things. And so I think it's important to be kind of aware of that and maybe have a kind of intention to be working with your control patterns and working to move more into trust and surrender. These big energies are going to be sweeping through our lives. And if we try to control them rather than channel and trust them, like trust ourselves to be carried by the waves and to channel them, but not to try to control them, because when they're coming, that can be the impulse. The instinct is to, oh no, this is too much. But it's like trying to shut it down is probably not that helpful. Whereas using your skill set of different practices to kind of, to channel the energy, to work with it, to ground it rather than control it, I think that would be wise. Yes. Cautions of overexpansion and depletion of resources. There's something about the projection of good and evil. We're just hearing it now with what's happening with the U.S. attack on Iran, starting to call other people evil, saying that's a bad person, that's a bad country. This is problematic. We can do it in our individual lives, of course, where we say that's an evil person, that's a bad person, that's a bad group of people. So it's a time to kind of pull back those projections and own your own shadow, own how you have a lot of the qualities that you're projecting onto others and labeling bad. The more you can own that and work with it, it's going to save a lot of pain. There's something about celebrating nature, celebrating the awesomeness of nature and protecting it. So much focus right now on climate change, extreme weather patterns, and this is an alignment that has a lot to do with facing that and working with that. But doing so in our own individual lives, I think part of that is spending more time in nature, connected to nature, so we feel ourselves as a part of nature. And from that place, have more of an impulse to work to protect nature in our own lives. Yes, the Lord of the Rings metaphor, the sense of checking in to see who is my fellowship this year? Who am I going to climb the mountain with together? That's part of our resource, right? Our resources include our fellowship of support, our support system. And I think it's a time to kind of be lighting the beacons and rallying the Rohirrim, calling these resources of support back to yourself so that they can be channeled in the year ahead. And there's something about, I think I said this, learning from previous hard experiences where you kind of like went all the way down. There's something about rags to riches with this alignment. Like the times where you went all the way down to your personal low point, and then remembering how you overcame that, how you persevered past it, and ultimately arose successful to whatever degree, and then drawing on that experience, that wisdom that is so well earned, to face whatever challenges might be in the year ahead, to also have a kind of humility from those experiences so that you learn to not overstretch yourself or kind of co-create the circumstances that led to hardship in the past. I think there's a lot about this alignment that has to do with developing a kind of positive attitude where you see the silver linings in things, where you're able to see that sometimes the suffering of our lives is totally intermingled with the joy of our lives. And sometimes the things that we see as being really huge challenges and big problems in our life, those same things later turn out to be totally necessary to the successes and joys of your life. Like, seeing that complexity is a big part of the teaching of 2020, I would say. Yes, yes, yes. Dark humor, I think, is important. Dark humor is important. And I think I've covered it. I feel like I pretty much covered it. Thank you, everyone. I want to say a couple more things just in conclusion here. I want to thank all of the recent new subscribers. Thank you so much for joining my channel and for coming aboard this starship of mine. I would like to invite anyone else out there that has found this video helpful to please consider subscribing to my channel. I would love to have you. I'm going to be doing regular portal updates throughout the coming year for the alignments I've named and other ones that I couldn't fit into this video. And so if you subscribe and hit the notifications bell, you will be notified when there's a new video. And please, if you like this video, please hit the like button and share with your friends. And I'd love to hear any comments that you have. If you want to share your vision for the year ahead or anything else in terms of response or question to this video, I'd love to read your comments. And the last thing, I have a promotion going for the next few weeks. And if you go to my website, stels.biz, you will see my mailing list. If you sign up for my mailing list, you will get all kinds of info and updates and promotions, and you'll see that the current promotion involves some discount on my normal fees, and I would love to work with you and help you make the most of these energies for the year ahead. So yeah, check out my website, stels.biz, and with that, I said blessings, blessings, love, love, love.